Before we drift away, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more calming sleep stories. Sweet dreams await. The soft tap of rain on canvas was the first thing you heard. Not a storm, just a steady rhythmic patter like nature's lullaby. It played on the roof of your small tent pitched at the edge of the forest. Through the mesh window, the trees swayed gently, their tall silhouettes hazy in the misty dusk. The campfire crackled, low and warm, painting flickering gold onto the damp forest floor. You sat cross-legged beside it, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, watching the tiny embers float upward like fireflies. The air smelled like pine needles and wet earth with just a hint of smoke. In the distance, you heard the slow hoot of an owl, as if the woods were greeting you in their own quiet language. You were alone but not lonely. The forest had a presence, ancient, vast, and humming with unseen life. You had hiked here to escape the noise of the world, to find quiet. But the quiet here wasn't empty. It was full of secrets. Beyond the trees, a narrow path curled deeper into the forest. They called it the Whispering Trail, named for how the wind seemed to speak through the branches. Some said the trees whispered warnings to those who dared to stay after dark. Others believed the forest only shared its secrets with those who truly listened. You sipped a warm drink from your mug, cinnamon and herbs calming your senses. The fire popped softly. Your eyelids grew heavy. Then, a sound. A rustling in the brush. Not sharp or sudden, but soft. Intentional. Like something walking or watching. You held still. It wasn't the wind. But you weren't afraid. Not really. The fire was still strong. The rain still gentle. Whatever was out there, if anything at all, seemed to be keeping its distance. Still, something pulled at your curiosity. You reached for your lantern and gently unzipped the tent. The world outside was dark green and gray, veiled by the drizzle. You stepped out, boots sinking slightly into the mossy earth, and turned toward the trail. You weren't sure why, but you felt like something was calling you deeper in. The rain had eased to a whisper, more mist than drizzle now, threading between the trees like breath. Your lantern cast a warm circle of light as you walked, the flame swaying gently with each step. The forest opened up before you in ways it hadn't during the day. At night, it felt more alive, like the trees leaned in to listen, like the air carried voices. The path was soft beneath your boots, blanketed in fallen needles and leaves. Your footsteps made barely a sound. Above, the tall pines stood in patient silence, their trunks glistening with moisture, their branches sheltering you like a cathedral roof. The campfire behind you was long out of sight now, but you didn't feel lost. The trail ahead had taken on a dreamlike quality, turning subtly, sometimes vanishing altogether, only to reappear again under your feet. Every so often you saw old wooden lanterns hanging from branches, long unlit. But as you passed, your own lantern seemed to catch their glass just right, and for a brief second each one would glow, dimly then fade. Were they reflections? Or something else? You told yourself it didn't matter. Still, you started to notice shapes between the trees, small ones, low to the ground, too still to be animals. At first you ignored them, but curiosity chipped away at your calm. You paused at the next bend and knelt down. A little stone figure sat nestled at the base of an oak. Moss-covered, humanoid, no eyes, just a smooth face. It looked handmade, like something left as an offering or a warning. You looked around. There were more. 5, 6, maybe a dozen. All watching the path. All silent. A breeze stirred, cooler now, and you shivered. You stood quickly and kept walking. The figures stayed behind, but the atmosphere had shifted. The rain picked up again, only slightly, but enough to patter on your shoulders and hood. Somewhere up ahead you heard a branch snap. This time it wasn't soft. This time it wasn't far. You raised the lantern higher, scanning the trees. Shadows danced between the trunks. You held your breath. Silence. Then, a glint of movement. Just for a second. Off to the left. Low to the ground. You called out. Hello. No answer. But the air felt denser now. The forest no longer whispered. It waited. Then, just when your pulse began to rise, you stepped into a clearing. And everything changed. The clearing was wide, almost circular, ringed with stones and dappled with ferns. In its center stood a stump, ancient and wide as a dining table. Around it were more stone figures, but these were taller, shoulder-high, and marked with carvings that time had half erased. And in the center of the stump, a small flame. No fuel, no wind, just a single flame flickering calmly like it had been waiting just for you. The fear melted from your chest, replaced with something else. The rain didn't touch this place. Not a drop. You stepped into the ring of stillness, feeling warmth brush your face, hearing nothing but your own heartbeat. You were being welcomed. Or tested. You sat by the stump, setting your lantern beside you, and for a while, you just listened. The forest began to whisper again. But this time, the voice was clearer. You sat beside the ancient stump, the small, impossible flame casting light that didn't flicker like fire should. It held steady like it wasn't burning wood, but time itself. Rain tapped faintly on the canopy far above, but not a drop entered this clearing. Even the wind seemed to skirt around it. This was a pocket of stillness in a world that breathed and shifted. You laid your hand on the stump's surface. It was warm. Not from the flame, but from something older, something living beneath the rings of age. And then, without warning, your eyelids grew heavy. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't sleepiness. It was the forest, pulling. You tried to stand, but your body felt distant, like your limbs were tucked in a blanket of fog. The fire on the stump flared gently, like it was signaling something, and before you could speak, your vision tilted softly, and the world dissolved into shadow and light. You were still in the clearing, but not. The trees around you stretched impossibly tall now, their trunks glowing faintly from within. Leaves shimmered with silvery veins. The sky was violet. The rain fell upward. You had entered the dream. And you weren't alone. Figures moved at the edge of the trees, tall, draped in moss and lichen, with hollowed-out faces and antlers of twisted root. They walked without sound. One stopped and turned toward you. Its face was carved wood, smooth and featureless, save for two black slits where eyes should be. You didn't feel fear. Not exactly. The figure raised a hand. Long fingers made of woven bark unfurled like the opening of a fern. And from behind you a soft voice spoke. Do you seek something, or are you being sought? You turned, but no one was there. Just the stump behind you, now taller, like a throne carved by wind and time. You were dreaming, but it felt more real than anything. You tried to speak. Your voice came out like a whisper inside a canyon. I don't know why I'm here. The forest rustled. Not with wind, but with approval. Like it had heard that answer before. Like it understood. Then, movement again. Quicker this time. Small shadows darting through the trees, laughing softly, their laughter like wind chimes in the distance. The stone figures you saw earlier were walking now. They moved in little hops and twitches, heads turning too fast, limbs stiff but playful. Some watched you. Some just watched something behind you. You turned quickly. Nothing. But the clearing suddenly seemed smaller. Closer. Like the forest was leaning in. You took a step back. The flame on the stump flared tall, almost blue now, and in its glow you saw them. Dozens of them. Peering from the trees. And they were blinking. But just as your heart began to race, the ground beneath you softened. The stump cracked open, not breaking but opening like a flower, and inside there was only light. Warm. Golden. Come. You stepped forward. The eyes vanished. The figures bowed. And the forest, with a long, deep breath, let you go. You awoke in the clearing. The small flames still burning gently. The rain had stopped. The stone figures were gone. Only the stump remained, and the quiet understanding that the forest had shown you something few ever see. You didn't know what it meant, but you felt chosen. And strangely, you felt no fear anymore. Just a sense that the real journey was about to begin. You left the stump behind as dawn tried to rise through thick gray clouds. The rain had returned, gentle as before, threading through the needles above in soft rivulets. You felt changed, like something in you had aligned with the forest's rhythm. The path reappeared as you walked. Not a trail exactly, but a series of natural cues. A fallen log pointing east, moss growing in a spiral on a boulder, an owl feather pinned to a branch as if deliberately placed. The forest thickened. The trees grew closer together, and the air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of something old, wood and stone and time. That's when you saw it. Half hidden behind ivy and low branches stood a cabin. Not ruined, not new. Just paused in time. Its wooden boards were warped with age, stained by years of rain. The windows were fogged but intact. One shutter hung loose, creaking slightly in the breeze. The door stood ajar as if someone had just stepped out, or just gone inside? You paused at the threshold. The forest behind you was still and quiet. Not watching, not warning, just waiting. You stepped inside. The air was cooler here. Still damp from the rain, but heavier, like breath that hadn't escaped in years. Inside the cabin was one room. A stone fireplace against the far wall filled with cold ash. A single chair near the hearth. A table with a candle melted down to the base. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of dried herbs, faded books, bones of small forest animals neatly arranged. Dust covered everything but no cobwebs. No decay. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt preserved. You passed your lantern over the walls, watching shadows move across hand-carved symbols etched into the beams. Trees, eyes, spirals, stars. One wall had dozens of tallies carved into it, as if someone had been counting. And then you heard it. A whisper. Not from outside. From the floorboards beneath you. You dropped to one knee, ear to the ground. At first, nothing, then a gentle pulsing sound. Like heartbeats, or breathing. The boards were warm. You stood quickly. Something creaked behind you. The chair near the hearth had turned. Just slightly. You told yourself it was the wind, that the cabin was shifting. But the candle on the table had lit. Flickering, faint, but very real. You didn't touch it. You stepped back toward the door, and it closed. Softly. No slam. No force. Just closed. You stood still. Then the fireplace coughed. Not a noise exactly, but a sound like a sigh. Then ash stirred, and from the cold hearth, something began to burn. It was not a normal fire. It had no flame. It glowed like a memory, red and gold and soft, flickering between shapes you couldn't quite focus on. Faces, leaves, eyes again. A spinning wheel, a door, and in the air above the hearth, something wrote itself in smoke. A single phrase, "We wait in the stillness." You turned slowly to the door. It was open again, and the rain had stopped. You left the cabin quietly. You didn't run. It didn't feel like a place meant to harm you, only to show you something you didn't yet understand. You looked back once. The candle still flickered in the window. You followed the sound of your own footsteps, trying not to think about how they no longer echoed. The forest felt quieter than before. Not peaceful, expectant. As you retraced your way from the cabin, the trees whispered low as though passing a message just out of reach. Leaves curled on branches, watching with a stillness that felt too precise to be natural. You glanced over your shoulder more than once. Not because you were afraid, because it felt like someone was walking just behind you. The forest never revealed them, but the feeling never left. The rain started again. Soft at first, then steady. You pulled your hood tighter and kept walking until the faint orange glow of your campfire returned, flickering gently through the trees. You sighed in relief when you saw your tent still standing, the fire crackling warm and welcome. You sat beside it and held your hands to the flames. But the warmth didn't reach your skin, and the fire wasn't quite right. It was burning sideways. You blinked. The flames leaned unnaturally to the left, curling toward a space just beyond the circle of light. No wind, no storm, just a tilt like the fire was trying to reach something, or someone. You turned slowly, heart picking up pace. There, at the edge of the trees, a figure, tall, wrapped in a long, dripping cloak as dark as the tree bark behind it. You couldn't see the face, only the outline, a presence, watching, not approaching, just there. You stared, not moving. Neither did it. Then the fire flickered blue for an instant. Cold air blew across your back, and the figure turned. Not with haste, not with threat, just enough to melt into the mist. Gone. You stood, stepping toward the edge of the light. The rain had grown heavier now, drumming gently on leaves and your tent roof. It muffled the forest's usual songs. No owls, no breeze, no insects. You were alone again. At least, that's what you told yourself. You returned to the fire. It straightened. Returned to normal. You sat. You watched it. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes, but the thought of the figure, the watcher, lingered. Who were they? A guardian? A ghost? A memory made flesh? You didn't know, but you suspected you hadn't seen the last of them. Because from deep within the forest, barely loud enough to hear, a low tone began to hum, like a voice vibrating through trees. A warning or a welcome. Would you like part 6 next? That's where the midnight bell rings, and the boundary between your world and the forest begins to truly blur. You awoke without realizing you had fallen asleep. The fire was low now, just embers pulsing with dull orange light. Rain still fell, softer than before, more like a lullaby than weather. You sat up in your sleeping bag and listened, not to the forest, to the silence, because the silence had a shape now, and something was moving inside it. You stepped out of the tent, boots landing quietly on the damp forest floor. The trees were veiled in fog, thick, silver gray, and curling like smoke. Your lantern flared as you raised it, revealing only a few feet ahead. Then it happened. A bell rang. One chime. Low, deep, metallic, echoing through the forest like it had been struck inside your chest. You turned toward the sound instinctively, but the fog made it impossible to find the source. It didn't come from above, or far. It came from everywhere at once. You waited. Another chime, softer this time. Then silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was listening. You followed the sound without thinking. Not down the path, but off it, through brambles that parted as if they knew your presence. The bell chimed a third time, faint, almost sad. You passed strange things as you walked. A coat hanging from a tree branch, soaked but perfectly preserved. A teacup resting on a flat stone, half full. A pair of boots facing a wall of bark, as if their owner had simply stepped out of them and vanished. The fourth bell came as you crossed a small stream, its surface perfectly still despite the falling rain. No ripples, no movement, but your reflection looked different. It was smiling, and you weren't. The final bell came as you reached a break in the trees. A circle of standing stones waited there, old and moss-covered, each one carved with symbols too worn to read. Fog coiled tightly inside the ring like it was trapped, and in the center stood a tree stump. Another one, but not like before. This one was cracked down the middle, hollow inside, and just above it, suspended in air, was a bell. Not hanging, floating. It turned slowly in place, invisible strings holding it to nothing. Its surface was blackened and tarnished, but carved with spirals like the ones in the cabin. You stepped closer. The moment your foot touched the edge of the stone ring, the bell stopped turning. Everything went still. Then the bell rang. Not loud, not sharp, but deeply personal. You heard your own name in the chime. Not spoken, but felt. In the bones. In the belly. Like a memory of being called home. And from the trees, someone stepped out. The watcher. Cloaked. Dripping. Closer now. But this time, you could see a glint of their face. It was your face, but older. Wiser. Tired. They raised a hand. Pointed to the bell. Then to the stump. And then, slowly, they faded into mist. Gone. You stood alone, rain falling steady again. But the silence was gone. The forest had found its voice. And now it knew yours. You left the stone circle slowly. Not because of fear, but because the forest no longer felt like a place you could rush through. The path, if it could be called that, opened wider with every step. Trees leaned back. The rain lifted. And the fog began to clear, parting like curtains drawn from a stage. And there, ahead of you, the forest split. Two trails. One bathed in soft golden light, filtered through canopy leaves that shimmered like sunlight on water. The air down that path smelled of honey and firewood. You could hear a distant melody, like an old lullaby played on strings. The other path was darker, not pitch black, but shaded, cool, and oddly silent. No breeze, no birds. Just stillness. The trees there were older, their bark rough and furrowed like the skin of giants. And even from where you stood, you could see faint blue glows pulsing like heartbeats between the trunks. A wooden signpost stood crooked in the earth between them. No arrows, no words. Just a symbol burned into the surface, a spiral splitting into two. You stood there for a long moment, weighing your breath, the dampness on your shoulders, the distant bell still echoing in your chest. Then you heard something. From the path of golden light, a child's laughter. Faint, musical, innocent. From the darker path, a low whisper, not threatening. Just a sound, like your own thoughts being repeated back to you. You took a step toward the golden trail. It felt safe, comforting. But something held you. You turned back toward the shadowed trail and realized something strange. There were footprints on that path. Yours, already there. The forest rustled, not with wind, but with a feeling. You looked again at the signpost. This wasn't a test. It was an invitation. 2 ways forward. But only one of them would lead you deeper into the dream beneath the roots. You closed your eyes, breathed in the rain-sweet air, and chose. You turned toward the darkened trail. As your foot crossed the invisible boundary, a hush fell across the forest, like it had been holding its breath, waiting for your choice. The temperature dropped, but not unpleasantly. The coolness was grounding, the way deep water feels just before you surrender to it. Fog drifted low across the path, pooling at your ankles, soft as smoke. You pressed on. The light faded quickly behind you. The golden path vanished into memory. Ahead, pale blue orbs hovered between the trees, wisps maybe, or something older. They pulsed in rhythm with your footsteps, dimming as you passed, as if watching. The roots beneath your boots began to shift, not violently, just subtly, guiding your feet, making it impossible to stray. You weren't walking so much as being led. And then the path opened. You found yourself in a clearing like no other. A shallow hollow in the earth, surrounded by trees that bent inward as if eavesdropping. At the center stood a great stone, a boulder carved into the shape of a sleeping creature, though what kind you couldn't tell. It had wings, a curled tail, antlers, but it slept. Moss blanketed its back. Tiny mushrooms glowed along its spine. Beneath one curled paw was a stone basin, filled with water so still it might have been glass. You stepped closer. When you looked into the basin, you didn't see your reflection. You saw memories. Not all of them were yours. A child beneath a table, drawing spirals in dust. A woman walking backward through the snow, vanishing with each step. A man lighting a lantern in a storm, and vanishing into the trees. A campfire under a full moon, burning in silence. The watcher, standing in a ring of stones, speaking to no one. Standing just as you were now. But behind you, in the reflection, the creature was awake. Its eyes open, its head turning. You spun around. Nothing had moved. Still asleep, still stone. But you felt it now. A low vibration in the air. A sense that the path ahead had narrowed and deepened. The blue lights began to gather. They drifted from the edges of the clearing, floating in close, circling you slowly. They didn't touch you. They simply spun, soft, silent, slow, until the forest around you blurred. Then the voice came. Not loud, not cruel, just ancient. You chose truth, it said, not comfort. You didn't answer. You didn't need to. The forest understood. The lights dimmed. The fog returned. The creature remained still. But as you turned to leave the clearing, the basin's water rippled. And a single word echoed behind your eyes. Remember. You don't remember how long you walked. The path unraveled beneath you in endless folds of shadow and mist, the roots parting with reverence, the blue lights fading one by one until you were alone. Not just in the forest, but outside time. Your footsteps didn't echo. They didn't even fall. You looked down. No prints. No rustle. No shift of earth or leaf. It was as if you were gliding over the ground, weightless, untethered, drifting forward by thought alone. Around you, the forest grew impossibly still. No insects, no rain. Only trees, tall and straight, their trunks pale as bone and smooth as glass. They had no bark, no branches, just endless vertical lines stretching upward into darkness. A strange gravity hung in the air. It didn't press you down. It pulled your mind outward, softly tugging at thoughts, memories, dreams you hadn't dreamed yet. Then you began to hear it. Not a sound exactly, but the absence of one. Like something was walking ahead of you, but removing each step before it could exist. A presence, moving just beyond the edge of vision. You quickened your pace. It stayed ahead, always just out of reach. The trees began to shift subtly now, their shapes bending as you passed, as if rearranging behind you, sealing you in, protecting or trapping you. You couldn't tell. That's when you saw the arch. It rose from the ground without warning, a wide wooden archway built from woven limbs and antlers. No carvings, no writing, just 2 symbols painted in mud, a circle and an eye. The air beneath the arch shimmered faintly, like a curtain of heat. You stepped through. Immediately sound returned, but not from the outside, from within you. Your breath was thunder. Your heartbeats echoed like drums on wet stone. Every blink, every swallow, every tiny motion, loud now. as though the forest were forcing you to hear yourself, to notice yourself. And then came the whispers, soft and many, somewhere far off, and deep beneath the roots. You couldn't make out words, but one message became clear. You've walked farther than most. The path brightened faintly ahead, just enough to show a figure, small, kneeling in the trail, a child. They wore a long cloak woven from moss and leaves, face hidden beneath a hood. Their hands were pressed to the soil, trembling. As you approached, they raised their heads slightly and whispered, "You shouldn't be here alone." Then the trees behind you rustled. Something had followed you. Something with no feet, no breath, but very, very real. The cloaked child didn't wait for your answer. They turned silently and began to walk, barefoot, deeper into the whispering trees. You followed, unsure whether the sound of your breath was real or just part of the forest's echo. Your legs moved easily now, like you were walking in a dream. You passed under trees with leaves shaped like teeth, over stones slick with moss and symbols too ancient to read. The air was damper here and colder, thick with the scent of wet roots and something older, something like rusted time. Eventually, the trees opened onto a ridge, and below it, silent and silver in the darkness, lay a lake, perfectly round, perfectly still. No ripples, no wind, just a black mirror reflecting stars that didn't exist in the sky above. And there, in the center, was the house, half submerged, its roof broken, its windows dark, its frame leaning just slightly to one side. Vines wound around its beams like veins, and its chimney poured no smoke, though you could swear you smelled something burning, cedar maybe, or old paper. The child pointed down the hill. "It's waiting." You found no path, just wet grass and sinking soil. The moment your foot touched the edge of the water, it parted, silently, as though it knew you. You didn't sink. You descended, like walking down glass stairs into moonlight. The air grew thick and slow around you. Water above, water below. Yet somehow you were still breathing. You reached the house in moments, or maybe hours. Time here moved like tree sap. The door was open. Inside, candlelight flickered. The interior was larger than the house should have been. Endless halls of half-flooded rooms stretched into darkness. Staircases curved in impossible directions. Furniture floated weightlessly, then settled again as you passed. Chairs, lamps, notebooks bloated with ink, and coats still dripping though no one had worn them for years. The child walked ahead, guiding you to a door made of dark wood. On it, a spiral, and beneath the spiral, carved in jagged lines. Everything you forgot still remembers you. They opened the door. Inside, a room filled with mirrors, but none showed your reflection. They showed moments. You, as a child, hiding beneath a table. You older, staring at a fire with tears on your face. You walking through this very house in another dream long ago. And behind every reflection, a second figure. The watcher. Always there. Always near. Sometimes reaching toward you. Sometimes turning away. The child finally spoke. "This house is made from your sleep. Every dream you left unfinished waits here." You turned. But the child was gone. Only their cloak remained, gently floating to the floor. And from deep below, under the boards, something began to rise. Not fast, not violent, just inevitable. It came slowly, as if climbing through syrup time, wood creaking beneath your feet, lanterns flickering despite the waterless stillness. From beneath the floorboards, dust lifted like breath. Not just one plank shifted. All of them. The entire room bowed upward, warping like a living thing exhaling for the first time in centuries. You didn't run. You didn't even step back. Because somehow you understood. This wasn't a monster. It was a return. The floor split open, not violently but with aching ceremony. Boards peeled back in spirals, revealing not dirt, not roots, but stairs. A staircase descending into pure dark. And at the base, a light. A faint flicker. You followed. The air grew warmer as you descended. Not comforting, just aware. Like you were being watched by walls that remembered every hand that had ever touched them. At the bottom, a chamber waited. Stone walls. An old, round table at its center. And around the table, chairs. Empty. Except one. Seated in the farthest chair, arms folded gently in its lap, was the thing that had risen. It wasn't grotesque. It wasn't even inhuman. It was shifting. Its form changed subtly each time your eyes moved. Sometimes a man hunched with shadowed eyes. Sometimes a woman, hair long and dripping with lake water. Sometimes a shape cloaked in tree bark and moss, crowned with antlers. But always, the face almost looked like yours. Not now, not quite, but a possible you. One who had chosen differently. One who never left the forest. It gestured to a chair beside it. You sat. The room didn't move, but the weight of it shifted, like the whole house had inhaled. Then it spoke. The others never make it this far. Its voice wasn't heard, it was felt. In the bones, in the teeth, in the roots of your scalp. They run from the dark. But you walked in. You opened your mouth, but no words came. That was fine. It didn't need answers. It leaned forward, pushed something across the table. A mirror, small, round, covered in a veil of black lace. You've seen pieces, now see whole. You pulled the lace away. In the mirror you saw nothing at first. Then fog, then the fire, then the tent. Sleeping, peaceful, alone. And just outside your tent, barely visible in the rain, the watcher, standing, still, facing away from you now, guarding, protecting, waiting. The figure across the table nodded. You're almost ready to leave, but not yet. It placed one hand on the table, and from its palm spilled something like ash and something like stars. First, you must give something back. The lights dimmed, the stairs vanished, and the mirror turned black. The black mirror lay flat on the table. Its surface no longer showed the tent, the fire, the watcher. Only your own reflection, now barely visible in the silver haze, like a memory slipping beneath water. The shifting figure across from you raised a hand and turned its palm outward. You felt it before it spoke. A pressure in your chest. Not pain, not fear, but the gentle ache of something stirring, long buried. Then the voice came. Give back what you no longer need. And suddenly the room around you, the stone walls, the table, the chairs, melted away. You stood in a place between. Not forest, not dream, but memory. Fog drifted across a narrow room. A single lamp swayed above a bed where someone slept, small and curled. You recognized the place. Old carpet, faded wallpaper, the smell of warm wool and tears dried in pillows. This was the room where you had once hidden during storms. The room where no one came when you called out. The room where silence became your lullaby. And there, on the desk near the window, sat a small wooden box. You knew what was inside. You hadn't thought of it in years. The note you never sent. The stone you found on the day everything changed. And the photograph, creased and colorless now, of the one who left without saying goodbye. The shifting figure stood beside you again, no longer behind the table. Its voice wrapped around you like smoke. The forest is made of forgotten things, but you carry what was meant to be left. It gestured to the box. Will you give it back? You stepped forward. Your hand hovered over the lid, and slowly, carefully, you opened it. The memories were small in size, but vast in feeling. You picked them up one by one, feeling their weight change as you touched them. Not heavier, not lighter, just known. You placed them in the mirror, not forcefully, not sorrowfully, just ready. As they disappeared into the dark glass, the chamber grew warmer. The air smelled again of rain on stone, of pine needles, of the fire far away. You turned. The figure nodded once, and began to dissolve into mist. Its final words drifted through the room like a fading echo. Now you may cross the water. The mirror lifted gently into the air, turning once, twice, 3 times, then vanished into the ceiling, and the floor beneath you became a ripple. Not solid, not water, something between. You rose, not walking, gliding, floating, remembering your way upward. The chamber beneath, the mirror, the ash, the fading voice, fell behind like a page turning itself. The walls became trees again. The air became cold, then warm, then wet with rain. You rose into the forest once more, but it had changed. Where you had. The sky above was navy and heavy with cloud, but no longer threatening. The rain had returned, soft and steady, drumming the leaves with lullaby rhythm. And in the distance, just where the roots bent into an arc, you saw it. A fire. You made your way toward it. The trees bowed gently as you passed, their branches forming quiet gates. The forest no longer whispered warnings. It watched, calmly, curiously, like an old friend waiting to see what you'd say. And when you arrived, you stopped, because you were already there. Across the fire, another you sat on a thick stump, cloaked in a woven shawl of moss and night. Their face was yours, their eyes were closed, and they were humming a tune you barely remembered, but somehow knew every note. They opened their eyes and smiled, not in surprise, in recognition. "Took you long enough," they said. They gestured to the empty log beside them. "Sit. The story's almost over." You sat beside your other self, the fire crackling warmly between you. The air smelled of rain and birch smoke. You could hear distant owls now, wind moving through hollow spaces, the soft shifting of forest roots turning over in their sleep. And then, your other self began to speak. "There was a traveler," they said, "who followed the rain into a forest that few remembered. They were searching for rest, and perhaps for something they'd lost." You didn't interrupt. The voice was familiar, your voice, but older, calmer, weathered like river stone. They passed paths that tried to turn them away, heard whispers that begged them to sleep, met shadows that looked like fear, but were only memories wearing masks. The fire pulsed, throwing long shadows behind the trees. And at the center, your other self continued, "They met the one who waits, the one who wears your face when you forget it, and they gave something back. They turned to you now." And so, the forest let them go. The wind grew louder, the fire brighter. A crack split the sky, a line of soft silver lightning, and in its flash the forest looked different again. Gentler, less haunted, more real. Your other self stood, brushing rain from their shoulders. "You're almost there," they said. "But before you wake, you have to go through the last dream." They turned and vanished into the trees without a sound. The fire dimmed. The rain slowed, and in the embers you saw one last path form, made of glimmering stones, each one glowing faintly with your own memories. Some sharp, some soft, all of them waiting. The ember path wound forward through the trees, each step warm beneath your feet, each stone pulsing softly with something you couldn't quite name. Not memories now, not visions, but possibilities. And as you followed them, the forest began to thin. The trees grew farther apart, the rain gentler still, until you reached the place between. At first it looked like a clearing. Mist hung in wide loops around stone arches and collapsed fences, overgrown with ivy and whisper grass. Crows gathered in perfect stillness, lining a split-rail fence as though waiting for something. At the center stood a house, lopsided, familiar in that uncanny, half-dreamed way. Its windows glowed with soft golden light. Its front door, slightly ajar, swung in rhythm with the breeze. You stepped forward, not rushed, not afraid, just ready. Inside, the air was warm and filled with scent, cedarwood, lavender, old pages turning themselves. No one greeted you, but someone had been here. Tea still steamed in a chipped porcelain cup. An open book rested on the arm of a chair, its pages fluttering like breath. Photographs lined the walls, blurry and faded, some scorched at the edges, but all of them showed you, in different places, with different faces, each a version you might have been. Some laughing in fields of fog, some holding lanterns at sea, some alone, some not, some asleep. Upstairs, a single room waited. You climbed without question now. Each stair felt like silk beneath your feet. And at the top, just before you reached the door, you heard it, breathing, slow. Yours. You opened the door, and saw yourself curled peacefully on a narrow bed. Rain tapped the window. A single candle burned on the desk. You stepped closer. Watched. Listened. The sleeping version of you stirred just slightly, like sensing the weight of your gaze. And then, your hand moved on its own. Not to wake them, but to touch the bedpost. The world swelled gently, the walls stretching outward like ripples. And in that moment you understood. This was the final threshold. Not a place you had come to, a place you had come from. And now, it was time to return. Behind you, the door creaked wider. Outside, the path home waited. Only now, you were carrying everything the forest had shown you. The light, the dark, the watcher's silence, the mirror's memory, and the voice that had worn your own face. The house did not vanish when you stepped through the door. It waited behind you, still and silent, its windows blinking shut like tired eyes. The rain was steady now, not cold, not sharp, just there, like a trusted rhythm, like breath. You stepped onto the path that glowed faintly beneath your feet, lit by embers only you could see. The trees thickened once more, but no longer loomed. They leaned in, watching you go, not with hunger, but with memory. After some time, maybe minutes, maybe miles, you heard it. Soft footsteps behind you, padded, measured, not trying to hide. You didn't turn right away, but when you did, it was there. A creature stood on the path just behind you. Not man, not beast, something in between. It was tall but bent slightly, like a figure drawn from mist. Its body was cloaked in pine needles and crow feathers, stitched with vines and glistening rain. Its head, low and wide-eyed, bore the calm stare of an old dog, or a dream too tired to fade. And though it never opened its mouth, you heard its voice clearly in your mind. I followed you in. I will follow you out. You left something here. But you also found something. You nodded, and it came closer, walking beside you. Just pause, if they were paws, made no sound. Its breath was warm and slow. And as the rain poured over both of you, a strange calm took hold. No fear, no fire, no urgency, just presence. The companion never asked your name. It didn't need to. It had always known you. From the first dream, from the spiral door, from the watcher's edge. The path wound one final time. And there, between two tall trees bent like guardians, you saw the tent. Your camp, still there, still waiting. The fire had gone out, but something glowed faintly in the ashes. A single coal, bright as a heartbeat. The creature paused behind you, and for the first time it spoke aloud. Not with sound, but with truth. You're not leaving the forest. You're bringing it with you. The rain slowed to a whisper. The mist drew back, and you stepped forward. You stepped into the clearing like a ghost stepping back into its own body. The trees bent softly overhead, their branches silvered by rain and starlight. Your tent stood where you'd left it, quiet, open, waiting. And the fire pit, though nearly dead, held that one ember still glowing. You knelt beside it. No words, no rush, just breath. You added dry bark from the bundle under the tarp. Pine needles, a whisper of moss. The flame bloomed slowly like it remembered you. And across from you, just outside the circle of firelight, the watcher returned. Not as a threat, not as a mystery, but as a part of you. Tall, still, cloaked in stormlight and silence. It sat at the edge of the fire, the rain sliding down its hooded shape without sound. Its face was not visible, but it no longer needed to be. It was you, the part that stayed awake while you slept. The guardian, the witness, the one who kept watch when the world turned cold. You lay back on your sleeping mat, pulled the blanket over your chest, listened to the forest breathe around you. Owls called in soft pulses from deep in the trees. A fox passed nearby, paws whispering in the underbrush. The rain became so gentle it could have been a dream itself. And across the fire, the watcher didn't move, didn't fade, didn't vanish, only watched, like it had always done. Your eyes grew heavy. The fire crackled in slow rhythm. Your limbs softened into the earth below you. The weight of the forest pressed around you, not heavy but holding, like the arms of something older than fear, older than time. And just before sleep claimed you, you heard it again, soft as a hum between trees. You are safe. You are home. You are remembered. The flame dimmed. The mist curled low. And the forest closed its eyes with you. Sleep now. The dream has ended. But the forest remains. The forest was still. Not silent. Never that. But still, like something breathing slowly beneath a thick wool blanket of mist. You lay beneath your tarp, wrapped in your blanket, the earth below warm where the fire had been. The coals had gone cold. The watcher was gone. But the feeling lingered. Something had watched over you while you slept. And something had stayed. Above, the sky was pale gray, and soft rain whispered through the canopy. Not a storm. A steady, rhythmic hush, like the forest reminding you, you're still here. And not alone. Birdsong flickered through the morning, quiet and careful. A blackbird landed nearby, tilted its head at you, and vanished into the trees. You sat up. Everything was damp, fragrant, alive. There was a strange calm in your chest, like the dream had followed you back. You boiled water. Made tea. Watched steam rise into the cool morning air. The forest didn't press on you today. It waited, as though it remembered the path you took, the things you gave back, and the truths you left in the mirror. But there was something new now. Something beyond the trees. You could feel it. Not calling. Not pulling. Just being. A presence in the distance, quiet as snow. You packed slowly. Folded your blanket. Checked your compass, still spinning. Checked your map, still blank. Checked the fire pit, cold but calm. And before you left, you noticed something. In the center of the pit, where the coal had glowed, a small, smooth stone, black and pulsing faintly with warmth. You pocketed it. Of course you did. You didn't know why, but you would. The path you chose was new. It wound deeper, but not downward. It rose into the mist, along ridgelines where tree trunks leaned like tired pillars. Moss carpeted every surface. Water ran in rivulets beside your boots. And far above, strange birds called once and fell quiet again. Every now and then, you felt something walking just out of sight beside you. Not the watcher. Not the shadow self. Something gentler. By noon, the trees parted into a wide, sloping hollow. And there, nestled like a secret beneath hanging vines, was a structure. Abandoned. Almost gone. A stone archway crumbling. A wall half swallowed by roots. And behind it, half buried in mud and silence, a doorway, still standing, still waiting. You approached it slowly, not afraid, but aware. The rain grew louder here somehow. Not heavier, just closer. You reached out, touched the stone frame, and for a second the air around you shimmered. A scent rose from the earth, rosemary, damp ash, something faintly metallic. And behind the door frame, though no door remained, you saw nothing but darkness. You crossed the threshold, and time let go. The moment your boot touched the ground beyond the frame, sound dropped away, like a cloth laid gently over your ears. No birds, no wind, not even your heartbeat, only stillness. It wasn't dark, not fully. Shapes shimmered in shades of deep gray and faded gold, as if the light here had been folded too many times, and now only remembered how to almost shine. You took another step. The ground was smooth, cool, and perfectly level. Not forest, not stone, not anything you touched before. And then you saw them. The walls. They weren't walls exactly. More like outlines, vague, enormous, pulsing faintly with old warmth. They reached upward and outward, fading into a sky that didn't exist. On them were carvings, marks, symbols you didn't recognize, but understood in the same way you understand music in a dream. Some were maps. Some were names. Some were questions still waiting for their answers. You ran your hand along one, a spiral etched into a square, and felt a memory. Not yours. Not yet. A voice echoed softly in the space. Not from any direction. Not from the air. From inside the stone. A whisper half-formed. Welcome back, vessel. You turned. And at the center of the space now, a shape had appeared, low to the ground, so wrapped in fur and shadow and time. It was an animal or something like one, curled like a sleeping fox, eyes closed, breathing slowly. You knelt beside it, not to wake it, just to be close. And when you placed your hand beside its flank, the voice returned. The forest remembers you. But do you remember the forest? Suddenly you saw flashes behind your eyes. The watcher standing at the edge of a burning mirror. A staircase that led nowhere but still waited. A campfire in a place where no trees grow. A story told to you by yourself as though you had always known it. And above all, the forest. Endless. Alive. Waiting. The curled creature opened one eye. Not a fox. Not a dog. Not a thing you could name. Its eye held stars. And smoke. And something that might have been tears. It didn't speak, but it knew you. And in the back of your mind, a new word bloomed quietly. Companion. The stone beneath you warmed. The symbols on the walls began to hum. And somewhere ahead, a new path opened, glowing faintly like old firelight under fresh rain. The creature stood, stretched, and walked past you, tail brushing your knee. It glanced back once, then waited. It was time to follow. But this would not be like the forest. This was something deeper, older, wider. And it knew your name. The path curved downward, though there was no ground, only suggestion. The light pulsed with each step your companion took ahead of you, its strange silhouette shifting slightly with each breath. There were no trees here, but it still felt like a forest, a deeper one, not built from bark or root, but from echoes. The air grew thick with scent. Wet loam, burned cedar, a sweetness like sap and forgotten spice. You could feel the ceiling now, though you saw no sky. Just a great pressure like soil hanging above your head, held back by old, whispering magic. The path split, then split again. Each fork a memory, a scent you half remembered from childhood, a sound you've heard only in dreams, a shadow that once visited your window and never came in. You didn't choose. The path chose for you. The companion walked without pause, his breath steady, its tail drawing lines in the mist that curled around your ankles. You passed a tree made of hands, not human hands, not alive, carved from bone or root, each one reaching outward in a soft, begging gesture. You didn't stop, but one hand turned gently as you passed, as if it recognized your presence. Further down you came upon a well, cracked, brimming with mist instead of water. The companion paused beside it, and from its center a sound rose, not a voice, but a memory made into sound, a lullaby, one someone once sang to you, when you were sick, or scared, or very small. It filled the chamber with warmth and sorrow. You felt your body go soft, your breath slowed. For a moment you almost knelt, almost curled into the moss. But the companion brushed your leg again and the moment passed. You moved on. Finally, the path narrowed into a low hollow. The ground here was real. Damp earth, scattered pine needles, rocks that pulsed softly beneath your feet. And in the clearing ahead you saw a second fire. Not like yours. This one burned blue, cool as starlight, crackling like wind through leaves that no longer grow. Seated around it were three figures, their shapes indistinct. One tall and wrapped in threadbare cloth. One short and wide, carved from something that glimmered like coal. One with no face at all, just a mirror where its head should be. They turned toward you in unison, and the tall one spoke. "You've come farther than most." The companion sat beside you. Its fur rose with quiet energy, but it didn't growl. You recognized them, and so did you, though you didn't know how. You felt their names bloom in the soil beneath you. The teller, the emberkin, the one who remembers. They gestured to the fire, and you sat, and for the first time you noticed your hands were glowing faintly, just like the coal you found that morning, just like the ember in the watcher's fire. The teller leaned forward. "Do you know what it means to carry light into the dark?" they asked, and your answer, whatever it is, will open the way forward. You sat by the blue fire, the three figures watching, the companion close, its side pressed against yours, warm and steady. The flames made no sound, but still they spoke. Each flicker cast long, impossible shadows against the walls of the hollow. Each shadow danced in time with your breath. The teller leaned forward once more. "You carry something from above. Light, yes, but also memory, also choice." Their voice didn't echo. It sank into the ground. The emberkin raised a heavy, glinting hand. From the base of its palm, a soft crackling began, like coals remembering the shape of fire. And then you felt it, the question, not asked in words but shown. When the fire is almost gone, and the night grows heavy, and the forest forgets your name, what do you leave behind to find your way? The one who remembers tilted its mirror face toward you. You saw no reflection, only fog, only potential. Your companion didn't speak, but its heartbeat grew louder beside you, slow, steady, like a distant drum guiding you home. You reached into your pocket, and your fingers closed around the coal, the one from the old campfire, the one that had glowed red in your palm at dawn. Now as you held it up, it pulsed brighter, responding not to the fire, but to the truth forming in your chest. Your voice, when it came, was quiet, but it didn't need to be loud. You said, "I leave behind what I no longer need, my fear of forgetting. The story will remember me, even if I don't remember it." The fire flared blue-white, and the stone beneath you shifted. With a deep groan, the hollow cracked open at its center, not in destruction, but as if some great mouth beneath the world had sighed with relief. The three figures nodded as one. The companion stood. The emberkin pressed a palm to the ground beside the crack. From the darkness below, a staircase unfurled, woven from tree roots and bone and something older than wood. The teller looked at you one last time. The forest does not test you. It invites you, and it remembers how you answer. You stepped toward the stairs. They smelled like soil and ancient wind. and as you descended, the blue fire faded behind you. The light you carried, small, steady, was enough. The companion followed. Down, down, and down again, until the stairway narrowed into a throat of stone, where breath echoed in strange rhythms, and the walls began to show carvings again. Not symbols this time, but faces, your own, one, different, from lifetimes you didn't know you'd lived. The stairs ended without warning. One moment, stone beneath your feet. The next, soft earth, cool moss, a hush so deep your breath sounded loud. Above you, the ceiling was gone, replaced with an open sky, but not the sky you knew. This one shimmered like wet leaves under moonlight, a dome of dark green and silver mist, where stars drifted sideways, like seeds on wind. You had stepped into a chamber of the forest's memory. The trees here were taller than any you'd seen above, wide as houses, woven with strange lanterns that glowed softly in the branches, though no fire burned in them. Your companion padded forward, careful now, head low, could feel it too. This place was awake. As you walked, faces emerged from the trunks. Not illusions, not carvings. Real faces, eyes closed, calm, sleeping within the trees. Some ancient, some familiar. You paused before one. It bore your shape, older, weathered, so, and around its brow, a crown of moss like tangled thoughts. Below it, etched faintly in the bark, a name you've never heard, but somehow knew belonged to you. A voice floated from the high canopy, soft, neutral, like mist forming sentences. Every time you've walked the forest, you left a thread behind. This is where the threads rest. The path forked again, this time without signs. Left, a tunnel of ivy and blue shadow. Right, a trail lit by fireflies that pulsed like a heartbeat. The companion stopped between them, looked at you, waited, but did not choose. This time you must decide. And both paths lead to something you've already forgotten. You chose. Which path doesn't matter yet. The forest already knows. And as you took the first step down that path, the faces in the trees exhaled, quiet, all at once, like the forest was letting go of something. Just as you stepped closer to finding it again, the path was soft, winding, and with every turn memory surfaced. The sound of your name in someone else's mouth, the smell of rain on stone at a door you never entered, the feel of a cloak around your shoulders, in a life that ended in silence. You weren't remembering, you were being remembered. At last, the path opened into a clearing shaped like a spiral. In the center, a mirror, round, cracked, set into the earth like a still pond. Your companion stood beside it, unmoving, and in the mirror you saw not your reflection, but all your names, spoken and unspoken, each one a version of you, who walked a path through fear, and found the fire anyway. The air grew warmer, the mist deepened, a breeze circled you and whispered, to go forward, leave behind the name you think is yours. Step through with the one the forest remembers. The spiral clearing hushed behind you. Only the mirror remained. It lay flush with the forest floor, half buried in moss, rimmed with symbols that flickered between languages. When you looked down, your reflection was wrong. Not a stranger, but a possibility. You blinked, and your reflection didn't. Your companion lay down beside the mirror, head on its paws. It watched with calm eyes, not guiding, not warning, just witnessing. You stepped onto the glass. It was warm, and impossibly deep. The moment both feet touched its surface, your weight vanished. You didn't fall. You folded. The world bent inward, like a pocket being turned inside out, and you were pulled into yourself. There is no forest here, just rooms, each one glowing faintly, filling the horizon like a honeycomb made of fog. Each one contains a version of you. Some you recognize, the younger you asleep by a fire, the braver you standing at the mouth of a cave, the quieter you riding in the rain beneath an overhang of roots. Others, you don't. One wears a mask and speaks in bird calls. One carries a lantern made of teeth. One is made of smoke and memory and waiting. Each version turns to you, not surprised, not afraid. They nod, one by one, and then step back, allowing you to pass. You begin walking. The walls between rooms are thin, woven of whisper and shadow. As you pass, you feel fragments of old thoughts rise up. It's not fear if you're still moving. Fire remembers everyone who carries it. You never left the forest. You just stopped listening. You reach a final chamber. There is no door, just you. And the first fire you ever lit. It flickers weakly, barely holding on. The embers glow in a shallow clay dish, set upon a stone carved with the same spiral from the watcher's hand. This is the fire of your beginning. The moment the forest first heard your name. You kneel, reach into your pocket, take out the coal. It glows red hot the instant it nears the flame, not to burn it down, but to wake it up. With a soft sigh, the fire swells, fills the room, fills you. Your companion's voice, for the first time, speaks into your mind. The fire knows you now. You may carry it again. When you look down, the mirror has become your cloak, black and silver, edges shimmering with names, weightless but real. The cloak of someone who remembers being remembered. And the room folds open once more, revealing a path above ground. It's night again, and it's raining, but you are not the same. You step out of the mirrored chamber, cloak trailing behind like mist given shape. Above you the forest is new again, not in color or shape, but in attention. The trees lean inward, the stones hum faintly beneath your feet. The path winds gently downward, its edges glowing with the same pale blue flame as the fire in the hollow days ago. The rain begins, a hush of droplets through high leaves. Not cold, not unwelcome. It's not falling on you, just walking with you. Your companion pads beside you, silent as always. But now you hear it more clearly. Its breath, the shift of its paws in the soil, the occasional low chuff as if it's speaking with its body. It glances up at you, and in its eyes you see reflection again, not of the forest, but of you standing in a place you haven't reached yet. Ahead, the path splits into 3 narrow trails, each one lit by a different kind of light. A golden shimmer like firelight through old windows, a soft green pulse like a heartbeat in moss, a shifting silver thread moving like river light across stone. Each path hums with a presence, not dangerous, but awake. You wait, listen, and then through the sound of rain, you hear something else, a voice. Distant, rough, but familiar. Is someone there? You follow it, not down any of the 3 glowing paths, but through a narrow break in the underbrush, where no trail has been carved. The companion follows without question. Branches brush your arms, leaves scatter your breath. The voice grows clearer. Eventually you find a campfire, small, real, not blue, not magical, just wood, ash, and orange flame. And seated beside it is a person, wrapped in a soaked coat, staring into the fire, muttering quietly to themselves. When they turn, you realize they look like you. Not exactly. Older, tired, with eyes that have seen something beyond the forest. They squint at you, then smile. It's crooked, relieved. Took you long enough, they say. I kept the fire going. Thought maybe you'd come back this time. You sit. The companion rests between you, and for a while the rain keeps falling. The stranger, your echo, your memory, your possible future, tell stories of other paths, other choices, other nights in the rain. Some are gentle, some are frightening. All are true. You speak too, and the forest listens. The fire grows stronger. At some point, the stranger grows quiet, looks into the flame, and says, "If you follow me, we'll find where the forest ends. But only if you're ready to leave something behind." Your companion stands again. So do you? You've carried a name, a coal, a story, but there's still one more shadow left to pass through. The stranger steps into the woods, and you follow. The stranger walks ahead. Their soaked coat flutters like a torn flag. Their steps don't disturb the leaves, but they part for them, as if the forest recognizes what they are. You follow. The companion close beside. The rain deepens, not harsher, just heavier, as though each drop carries weight now. Around you the trees shift. They aren't just old, they're watching. Their bark pulses faintly, like breath slowed to ancient rhythm, and the light disappears. Not all at once, not like night, but like the fire in your hands has grown shy. Soon even the stranger's outline becomes shadow. They stop before a tree unlike the others. His bark is black, glassy, covered in etchings that move, not symbols, memories. And when you step closer, you realize this tree holds every choice you didn't make. You see, A version of you who turned back at the stairs. A version who lit no fire. A version who gave in to the whispering voice near the mirror. They are not failures. They are echoes. And this tree? It's listening. The stranger touches it gently. Their fingers leave no mark, but the tree shudders, as if remembering something long buried. They turn to you and speak softly. This is where it all returns. The fire, the fear, the forgetting. You can't carry all of it through. Then they step back and vanish. No drama, no sound, gone. You stand before the tree. Your companion doesn't move. Its gaze is fixed on the bark. You know suddenly what's required. Not a sacrifice, not an offering, a release. The last thing weighing down your steps. The piece of you that still resists the truth, that you are not meant to pass through the forest unchanged. That fear is not the enemy, it's the doorway. You take a breath, the deepest so far, and speak, not aloud but inward. I am not what I left behind. I am what remains. The tree leans toward you. Its trunk splits open, not broken, welcoming. A passage, narrow and dark, and from inside, the sound of wind, and something humming your name. You step in. The companion follows. The bark closes behind you, soft as skin. Inside, no light, just the sound of your own heartbeat, and an old song sung by something with your voice. A voice that never learned to be afraid of the dark. The tree closed behind you like a sigh. All light vanished. No moon, no flame, no reflection. Only the sound of rain through wood, a muffled rhythm like a lullaby from another world. And beneath it, breathing, not your own, not the companion's, deeper, older, like the earth itself was waiting to exhale. You walk by, feel alone, hands brushing the walls, not rough bark anymore, but smooth and warm, like polished bone or old stone, that had been shaped by centuries of touch. And always just ahead, that hum, low, steady, not threatening, just there, like a heartbeat beneath water. After a while, the tunnel opened into a chamber, round, vast, lit by a single source, a fire burning without flame. It pulsed like a living thing, coiled in the center of the space, not a campfire, but a furnace of glowing threads, twisting in and out of one another like strands of memory. The fire breathed, and with each pulse, the walls around you flickered to life. You saw a child crouched by a window, drawing stars on fogged glass. A figure standing at the edge of a cliff, whispering a name into the wind. A hand reaching through smoke to pull someone else up. Each flicker was you. Different times, different fears, same fire. Then the hum sharpened, became a voice, but not from around you, from within. You carried me, through rain and ruin, through stories forgotten and nights that bent the sky. But you never let me burn. You felt it now, the truth behind the fear. You weren't running from it. You were carrying it, nurturing it, protecting something small and bright. Inside all the dark, the companion stepped forward, sat beside the fire, waited. You understood. This was the place. This was where the fear stopped being a shadow and became a lantern. You stepped closer, held out your hands. The fire reached back. It didn't scorch. It welcomed, flowed into your chest like warmth into cold limbs. You staggered, not in pain, but in recognition. The fire was your memory, the heat of every moment you chose to keep going. And now, it was yours to carry again. The chamber trembled, not collapsing, opening. The walls split into tall, arching doorways, where there had once been only stone, each one glowing, each one leading to a different part of the forest, or a different part of you. The companion looked up. Its eyes were no longer animal. They were ancient, soft. Spoke again, not aloud, but directly into your mind. Now we walk as fire. And with that, you stepped through the center arch. The rain beyond was still falling, but now, you glowed from within. No need for torches, no need for maps. You had become the thing the shadows feared. The arch behind you shimmered closed, its stone surface sealing like a whisper forgotten. You stood at the edge of a ridge, the forest sloping down into mist that pulsed like a living sea. The fire within your chest throbbed gently, a warm presence behind your ribs, not searing, not flickering, steady, sure. Above the clouds churned, no moon, just a dim silver glow behind the sky, like something watching from above the rain. Your companion stood beside you. Its form shimmered at the edges now, less wolf, more wind, its eyes twin sparks that mirrored your own. It said nothing, but you felt its calm reach across the silence. Then, the wind changed. You heard something beneath the mist, not footsteps, not breath, a creaking, like a hinge long and used. Then, a door appeared. It stood freestanding at the base of the hill. No walls, no frame, just a tall dark wood slab, with a single brass handle, and a deep vertical scar through the grain. It was breathing, not metaphorically, literally, slow rhythmic expansions. Inhale, exhale, as if the door itself were waiting for you to choose. You approached. The companion did not follow. It sat at the top of the hill, watching, waiting. This was your step alone. When you reached the door, you saw something etched into the handle. No key, no lock, only trust. You understood. The fire wouldn't open it. The coal wouldn't. Not your strength, nor your will. Only a gesture as old as the forest. You placed your hand on the door, not to force, but to be present. The wood felt warm. It exhaled, and then it opened. No creak, no flash, just a widening, like a mouth welcoming a long-awaited word. Inside, a hallway made of rain. Yes, rain. Falling upward and sideways, twisting in loops, forming soft walls and flowing ceilings that pulsed with every memory you carried. As you walked forward, images bloomed in the droplets. The campfire beneath the split tree, the spiral stairs, the handprint on your wrist, the shadow versions of yourself watching from behind trees. The moment you chose to walk deeper, even when afraid, each memory dissolved as you passed. Not lost, just returned. Back to the forest, back to the story. At the far end of the hallway stood another door. This one wasn't breathing. It was still, but it glowed faintly, and carved into it were 3 words. One more night. When you opened it, you stepped into a clearing, circular, silent. In its center, a single stone table. Upon it, a candle, unlit, and behind it, a figure. Not the companion, not the stranger. This one was hooded, face hidden, wrapped in cloak and shadow. They turned as you entered, and spoke in a voice that sounded like all the others combined. Sit. It's time to remember why you came. The figure across the table remained motionless. Their hood dripped with rain, though no drops touched the candle. Sat between you, a stub of wax, pale and old, its wick curling like a question mark, etched in shadow. You reached for the flame within yourself, the fire you'd carried since the hollow, since the forest first whispered your name. And the moment your breath touched the wick, the candle lit, not with orange, not with blue, but a soft, silvery white flame that made no sound and cast no shadow. The figure nodded slowly. Then they spoke. This flame is the memory of your journey. It burns for what you've chosen and what you've left behind. Their voice echoed strangely, as if they weren't speaking to you, but through you. Then, now you will be asked one question. Not a test, not a trick, but a mirror. You swallowed. The candle's light flickered against the trees around you, revealing no leaves, no bark, only faces, hundreds, all watching, all yours, different ages, different moods, all pieces of you that had wandered through the story. Some were smiling, some were scared, some turned away, but all of them listened. Then came the question, spoken not in words, but felt. A presence entered your chest, filled your lungs, settled in your bones like thunder waiting to break. If the forest let you leave, would you still choose to stay? Time stilled. The candle did not flicker, and the faces leaned in, not to judge, to witness. You thought of the moment you stood beneath the rain and felt seen, the blue fire and what it burned away, the voices in the hollow, the touch of the companion's mind against yours, the silence beneath the breathing door. You thought of the fear, and how it had become warmth, how it had become yours. And when the answer came, it didn't come in words. You simply breathed, slow, true, steady. And the flame in the candle grew taller. The figure nodded, then rose. As they did, the hood slipped away, and there was no face beneath, only the same flame, you carried in your chest. They were you, or something from you, a future, a guardian, a memory. They stepped back, and with that, the candle became a door, not physical, but light solidified, the last threshold, and beyond it, a place not of forest, but of answer. The companion reappeared behind you, eyes soft. It no longer needed to lead. Now it would follow, because now, you were the fire. The doorway of light stood before you, shaped by flame, not wood, its edges rippling like the surface of still water. Remembering a storm, you took a breath, not to steady yourself, but to feel everything one last time. The weight, the warmth, the rain clinging to your skin like soft hands saying, "Don't forget us." Then, you stepped through. No fall, no shift, just a folding, like turning the page of a very old book. You opened into darkness, but not the kind that swallows. This darkness held you, cool and weightless, like lying on your back in deep night, and far, far above, no below, stars, not in the sky, beneath you, as if the forest roots stretched downward into constellations, and each glowing point was a memory, buried so deep it had bloomed into light. You floated there, drifting gently in a space that had no up or down, and as you turned slowly, you saw a shape moving beneath the stars, massive, slow, breathing. A creature? A spirit? No, it was the forest itself, but not trees. This was the idea of forest, the original one, the dreamer behind every branch you'd walked beneath. Its form shifted as you looked, sometimes a woman with bark for skin and eyes like river stones, sometimes a great black elk with stars for antlers, sometimes just the whisper of wind that has no source. It spoke not in words, but in images, and the meaning settled over you, like a blanket pulled up by invisible hands. You came to sleep, but you did not come to forget. You came to be remembered. The fire inside you flared gently in response, not in fear, in recognition. This was what the forest had always been trying to show you. Not escape, not safety, but that quiet, sacred knowing that even your fears are made of light. The forest being extended something toward you. Its gesture pulled together stars, roots, and water into a single form. A seed, small, dark, glowing at the edges. This was your gift, not a reward, a reminder. Take this, and wherever you go, a forest will grow behind your eyes. You reached out. The moment you touched the seed, it dissolved, not vanished, but entered you. And in its place, the light returned, not just above, but within. You opened your eyes. Rain tapped gently on your chest. You were back in the clearing. Morning had come. The candle was gone. The stone table was covered in moss, as though centuries had passed in a single blink. And your companion, lying peacefully beside you, breathing slow, still there, still watching, still home, somewhere far off. A crow called, somewhere closer. A new trail waited, not because you needed to go anywhere, but because now, you could go everywhere. The morning was pale and still. The rain had softened to a whisper, barely more than mist now, falling in silvery sheets that made the air shimmer. You stood slowly. The companion stirred beside you, blinking as though it too had dreamed deeply. And as you took a first slow step toward the forest's edge, you noticed something strange. The trees looked familiar, too familiar. You'd been here before. Not in this story, not even in this life perhaps. But the moss on that stone, the twist of that old branch, the way the roots curled just so under your feet, you knew this path. It felt like remembering a word that had no translation. The forest had circled you back, but something was different now. The silence, the air, the scent. There was water near, not rain, river. You followed the sound. It was subtle, like music heard through layers of sleep. Not a rush, but a steady movement, ancient, determined. The companion didn't lead. It followed this time, quiet, alert, its fur lifting in little waves as the mist thickened. Soon, the trees began to thin, and ahead, through a veil of hanging moss and fern, you saw it, a river wide and dark as ink, flowing uphill. You paused, not in fear, in awe. The water moved against gravity, curling along the rocks like memory slipping backward. Its surface shimmered with strange lights. Stars? Fireflies? reflections of things that weren't in the sky. As you stepped closer, a shape rose from the riverbank, tall, thin, cloaked in wet reeds and trailing silver strands of water from its hands. Its face was not visible, only a single eye, round and mirror-like, where its face should be, and it looked at you. You didn't flinch. You waited. The figure raised one hand and pointed to the river, then spoke without sound. "This is the place where your dreams go, when you forget them." The companion whimpered softly beside you, not in fear, in reverence. You looked into the water and saw yourself, but not now, not here. Other versions, running, hiding, reaching, dancing, dying. Each was a moment you'd once dreamed and let slip away. The river pulled at your chest, not like a current, but like grief, gentle, persistent, familiar. You could feel the pull of every story you'd abandoned, every sleep-interrupted thought that had tried to become something more. "Drink," the figure said, "and remember what you didn't know you lost." You knelt, cupped the black water in your hands, and drank. It was cold, then warm, then nothing. Not absence, not emptiness, stillness. You felt the river move through you, and with it came a sudden aching clarity. All those forgotten pieces were not gone. They were waiting to be seen. When you stood, the figure had vanished, but in the sand where it stood, a single item remained, a smooth, flat stone, carved with an image you couldn't name, yet somehow understood. A door, a hand, an eye. The companion touched it with its nose, and the symbol shimmered briefly, then sank into your palm. A mark, not a burden, not a curse, a key. You turned from the river. The trees were thicker now, but the path forward had cleared. The rain had stopped, but the sound of water followed you, soft as breath. Like the forest now carried the river inside its roots. In the distance, something glowed faintly. Another campfire, but this one moved. You stepped carefully over roots slick with dew, the river song still humming faintly in your bones. Above, clouds shifted like great wings, unfolding behind a sky you couldn't quite see. The glow was ahead, not flickering like fire, but steady, like a lantern held with purpose. You pressed forward, the companion keeping close this time, silent as your breath. Eventually, the trees opened into a narrow clearing, and there, at its center, stood a figure beside a floating flame. Not a torch, not a campfire. The flame simply hovered, a few inches above the moss, casting long, flickering shadows that did not match the shape of the figure nearby. They wore a long, rain-stained coat. Their boots were old, caked in mud and ash. A wide-brimmed hat hid most of their face, except for a jaw sharp as a blade, and skin pale as driftwood. When they turned toward you, the flame dimmed, but not out of fear, out of recognition. The figure spoke first. "You came through the river. Thought I smelled something ancient on the wind." Their voice was like rusted bells, familiar but long forgotten. Not old, tired. They crouched by the hovering flame and stirred it gently with a twig. "Name's not important. I walk this forest at night, between dreams that outlive their dreamers." You stepped closer, but the companion didn't follow. It hung back, ears low, eyes wary. The traveler noticed. "It's right to be cautious. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here because you're getting close. Too close." They looked up, and for a second, you saw their eyes, and they were your own. You staggered back slightly. The traveler didn't move. "Everyone who comes far enough through the forest meets me eventually. And what waits? When the story starts remembering you." They stood and took something from their coat. A small, cracked compass. Its needle spun without stopping. "You've seen things you don't understand yet. That's fine. But they've seen you too." They handed you the compass. It was warm, and when you held it, the needle stopped, not pointing north, pointing behind you. You turned. Nothing. Just trees. Then the traveler's voice behind you. "There's something following you now. Been walking your shadow since the night you first lit the fire." The companion growled softly, and now you heard it too. Footsteps. Far off. Too light to belong to something living. Too slow to belong to something kind. The traveler took a deep breath. "It won't catch you tonight, but you'll see it again. When you're ready." You looked back at them, tried to ask, "What is it?" They shook their head. No name. That's the problem with it. Just a question that never wanted an answer. They gestured toward a new path. It hadn't been there before, twisting downward, into a deeper part of the forest, where no birds sang, and the trees leaned inward as if listening. Go. You've got one last thing to remember, before the next night falls. As you turned to leave, the traveler's voice called out one last time. If you see the lanterns, don't follow them. They're not lit for you. Then they and the flame vanished, and in the distance, a sound rose. A bell? No, a lullaby, sung by something that didn't need a mouth to be heard. The path beneath your feet twisted downward. Each step was softer than the last, the soil turning to something deeper, less like dirt, more like memory. The trees here grew close together, leaning in above you, their branches latticing into a canopy so thick, even the mist couldn't pass. Light faded, but not into blackness, into a kind of gray warmth, like dusk before a long sleep. And just below your feet, you felt them, roots, alive, listening. You moved slowly. The companion beside you placed each paw with care, as if stepping across something sacred. And all around, the air changed. No birds, no wind, only whispers, not words, not really, just the hush of old things, murmuring to each other. After a time, you reached a hollow in the earth, where the path opened into a shallow, root-bound glade. There, in the center, a tree unlike any other you'd seen. Its bark was deep black with streaks of silver. Its branches reached downward, growing into the soil as though trying to return to something. And at its base, nestled within the roots, was a circle of stones, smooth, dry, and warm. You stepped into the circle. Immediately, the air shifted, not colder, heavier, the kind of weight that comes when a place remembers what happened there. The companion sat just outside the stones, refused to enter, but didn't stop you. You knelt, placed your hand on the center stone, and in a heartbeat, you were somewhere else, not standing, not dreaming, remembering. You were younger, or older, hard to tell, walking through a rainstorm, alone. Before you ever found the forest, you saw your own face, drawn and tired, searching the horizon for something you couldn't name. Then, a door, a simple wooden one, freestanding in a field of fog. You'd forgotten this, the first time you found your way in, the first time the forest saw you, and chose not to let you go. Your eyes opened. The tree stood still, but its roots had shifted subtly, just enough to form a passage, a low tunnel through the dark. You knew what it meant, a path forward, but also downward, where things deeper than fear wait. The companion whined, just once, then followed. As you stepped into the passage, you could feel it again, that presence, the one from the river, from the question by candlelight. It was near, not waiting, watching. Ahead, something moved, just out of sight, not threatening, not kind, simply true. And truths in the forest always have roots. The tunnel beneath the roots was low and warm, like the inside of a sleeping animal. The walls pulsed softly, not with light, but with memory. As you walked, you saw faint outlines in the bark and earth, faces without names, moments without context, a hand holding a candle, a door opening where there was no wall, eyes watching from a mirror that had no reflection. The companion stayed at your heel, silent now, its breath shallow, and ahead, something breathed back. You emerged from the tunnel into a vast hollow, a cathedral of roots. Massive trunks rose in impossible directions, their limbs tangling in the air like frozen lightning. Above you, the ceiling was a net of leaves, pale and veined like old parchment. At the very center of the chamber was a wide, circular pit, not dug, grown. The earth around it had curled downward, as if pulled by something beneath, and at its rim sat three objects: a bowl made of obsidian, a small bell with no clapper, and a single withered mask, carved from birch. The companion wouldn't approach. You did, and when your hand touched the bowl, the pit spoke, not aloud, inside you. A voice like bark cracking in frost. You are the firewalker, the rain sleeper, the one who carries silence like a torch. The bell rang, but no one touched it, and suddenly, the pit began to move. It didn't open. It unfolded. The earth rippled outward, slow as breath, and something vast rose from below. Not a creature, not a spirit, something older. It had no shape, only presence, like an idea trying to take form. From its center, a light grew, dim, pale, and shaped like your face. You weren't afraid, because somewhere deep inside, you recognized it, not as a reflection, but as the part of you that had stayed asleep. When the rest of you woke up, it reached out, not with arms, with story, and you saw it all. The nights you cried without knowing why, the dreams you abandoned too soon, the things you almost became. This was the mouth of the deep wood, and it did not devour, remembered, and now, it asked you to do the same. The mask on the ground lifted, not by hand, by choice. It hovered in front of you, and offered itself. Wear this, the voice said, and forget nothing. You nodded, and placed it on your face. Darkness, then, not vision, understanding. You were not just in the forest, you were part of it. The fire, the river, the roots, the door, and even the thing that followed in silence. That was yours too. When you awoke, you were lying on your back, beside a cold fire pit. The companion was curled beside you. The forest was quiet, and above you, the sky was not night. It was dawn, a new day, but not the one you left behind. A new kind of day, the kind that only comes after the part of sleep where you forget your name, and then remember it, not as a word, but as a place. You stood, you walked, and behind you, the deep wood closed its mouth, but its echo stayed, with every step you took. The dawn that met you was pale and slow, like a candle trying to remember how to burn. Rain no longer fell, but the leaves still held droplets like pearls, shivering in the hush. The companion walked ahead now, tail low but steady, as if it knew where to go, even if it didn't want to. You moved quietly through the underbrush, the weight of the mask still a presence in your bones, not worn, but absorbed. Something had shifted in you. You weren't just a guest in the forest anymore. You were something the forest had decided to keep. By midday, the trees began to part again, revealing a low valley of moss and shallow mist, and hanging from the branches above, lanterns, hundreds of them, maybe more, each swaying softly, with no wind to stir them, each one glowing faintly, with a fire that didn't flicker. The air here tasted different, metallic, almost sweet. You froze, because you remembered the warning. If you see the lanterns, don't follow them. They're not lit for you. But one of them was brighter, lower, closer to the path, and the flame inside it shifted when you looked at it. Not random, deliberate. You turned to the companion. It was gone. No rustle, no footstep, no goodbye. Only the lanterns remained, all still, except one. Your name echoed, quiet and wrong, not spoken out loud, but under your skin. You tried to step backward, but the forest had changed. There was no path behind you anymore, only fog, and the lantern, still burning, still watching, still waiting. You stepped toward it, not because you wanted to, because you needed to know. The moment your fingers touched the cool brass frame, the flame inside flared, and you were elsewhere, not lost, not dreaming, suspended, a space between things, between before and after. All around you floated other lanterns, untethered now, like glowing jellyfish drifting through the dark. Each one pulsed with feeling, regret, hunger, loneliness, hope. And then one drifted close. Yours. It showed you something. A clearing, your old campsite. But in it, someone else, curled by the fire, wearing your clothes, holding your compass. Their face was yours, but younger, weaker, unchanged, trapped in the version of you that never kept going, that gave up before the story deepened, that chose to wake up before the forest could finish its sentence. You reached for the lantern, and it burned you, not fire, memory, and suddenly, you were back, staggering on the moss, breath sharp, heart racing. The lantern now hung motionless again, its glow fading. The others were still, silent, except one, far off, flickering in a way that wasn't light, a shadow in reverse, and beneath it, a figure, tall, waiting. You turned to run, But the companion was there, returned, muddy, panting, its eyes wide. It growled once, soft, then turned toward a narrow path to the right, away from the Valley of Lanterns. You didn't need to be told twice. As you left the hanging lights behind, one last whisper slipped through the trees. We only light what we want to remember. And some things, perhaps, were never meant to be seen again. But something had seen you, and now it was walking parallel, just beyond the edge of the trees, where light didn't quite reach. You followed the companion down the narrow path, your feet sinking into wet leaves, each step muffled like walking through someone else's dream. The lanterns were far behind now, their strange glow replaced by the quiet rhythm of your breath and the gentle stir of wind. But the feeling, that crawling presence just outside your vision, remained. It had not stayed behind. It never had. The trees here grew tall and sharp, as if they had forgotten how to bend. Moss dripped from every branch. Pale vines hung low like the threads of forgotten lullabies. You heard nothing. No birds, no breeze, no echo of footfall behind you. But still, you knew, it was there. Not walking with sound, walking with memory. Each place you stepped was somewhere it had already been. The companion stopped suddenly, ears twitching, nose low to the ground. Then it growled, not with fear, but with recognition. And that's when you heard it too. Not a noise, a lack, a space where sound should be, but wasn't. It moved around you in circles, like a predator tasting your name. Ahead, the forest opened into a clearing. Wide, empty, still. At its center stood an old stone archway, half buried in roots and time. No door, just an opening into something darker than any night you'd yet seen. The companion would not follow. It sat at the edge of the clearing, eyes locked on the arch, tail still, waiting, or warning. You stepped into the clearing alone, and the moment your foot crossed the boundary, it arrived. No flash, no roar, just a shift in the shadows. A part of the world that wasn't supposed to move, did. And from that wrongness, stepped something impossible. It had no face, only a smooth expanse, where one might have been. His body was tall, thin, smoke wrapped in tatters of wind-worn black. It made no sound, not even when it stepped forward. But the trees behind you bent backward, as if retreating from its shape. It raised one long, spindled hand and pointed at you. Your breath froze in your throat, but not from fear, from understanding, because you recognized it. You had seen it before, in dreams you forgot as a child, in corners of mirrors that made no sense, in questions you never dared to finish asking. It was what followed, when people tried to leave their own story too soon. The shadow of the unfinished, the listener of abandoned paths, and it had been following you since you stepped beyond your own beginning. It spoke, but not with words. It showed you a memory you hadn't lived yet, you standing at the river again, older, alone, choosing whether to stay or go deeper. And behind you, no companion. The image vanished. You blinked. The shadow lowered its hand, then turned, and walked silently through the stone arch. Gone. No sound, no trace, only a faint chill in the air, and a knowing weight in your chest. You turned back. The companion was waiting, its head tilted, as if to ask, "Did you see it?" You nodded. You'd seen more than you were ready for. But still, you stepped forward, because the story was not finished. Not yet. The sky was beginning to darken again, but not like night, more like a curtain being drawn, a quiet folding of color into shadow. You walked without speaking, the companion at your side, your breath calm now, but heavy. The air was full of that distant scent again, wet bark, soot, and something like burned paper. And just as the path began to vanish into a dense thicket, you saw it, a cabin, nestled between two ancient trees, small, slanted, unassuming, but something about it felt like it remembered you. Its roof was patched with moss, its windows fogged from the inside. A thin stream of smoke curled from a crooked chimney, curling in the shape of a question mark, before it was swallowed by the clouds. You didn't remember building it, but somehow you remembered leaving it. And the companion, strangely, didn't hesitate. It trotted up the crooked steps and pawed gently at the door. No growl, no warning, just quiet trust. You stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and rain. The floor creaked softly beneath your feet, but the sound was gentle, like an old house stretching in its sleep. There were no lights, only the soft glow of a fire, burning low in a stone hearth. And above the mantel, hanging crooked on a nail, was something you hadn't seen since you were very young. A drawing you made, childlike, charcoal and leaves on paper. A forest, a shadow, a door. You explored slowly. The cabin had one room, a chair by the fire, worn smooth with use, a shelf of books, their titles in languages that didn't need letters, a kettle still warm, and a small bed in the corner, layered in thick quilts, smelling faintly of pine. At the foot of the bed lay a journal, blank, but old, waiting. The companion curled up on the rug near the fire, and for the first time in what felt like days, you sat. The fire crackled softly. Rain began again outside, tapping against the windows, like gentle fingertips. And in that moment, you realized this was the first place the forest had built for you. Not to test you, not to frighten you, not even to teach you, just to let you rest. But even as your eyes began to drift, something whispered in the flames. Not threatening, not even clear, just a sound like, "Remember this." You stood again and walked to the window. Outside, the trees stood still in the rain, their limbs heavy with sleep. But far down the path, barely visible through the mist, was a faint flicker of blue. Not fire, not lightning, a lantern, not one of the others, a new one, not swaying, waiting. The companion didn't stir. It was your choice now. Stay, sleep, or follow. But not yet. For now, you turned back to the fire. The chair welcomed you like it had missed your weight. The forest whispered stories you hadn't heard in years, and you closed your eyes, just for a while. The fire had grown low. The companion slept, twitching now and then, caught in a dream it couldn't share. You had drifted too, somewhere between sleep and stillness. Your thoughts curled up around the heat, like smoke around a candle. But something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong. A breath that didn't match the rhythm of the cabin. A creak that came from outside, when no wind should have touched the porch. And then, a sound like soft metal, tapping once, then twice, then nothing. You rose. The rain had thickened, now falling like threads through needles. Slow, precise, silver. You opened the door, and there it was, the lantern, flickering at the edge of the trees. Blue fire, but soft, almost apologetic. It didn't move, but it pulsed, as if in time with your breath. An invitation, not a demand. The companion woke and watched you from the hearth. It didn't move to follow this time, as if the forest had told it, "Not this part. This was yours, yours alone." So you stepped into the rain. The path was not a path at all, more a memory of footsteps, threading between trees that weren't always trees. The lantern stayed just ahead, floating as if tied to the fog itself. It never touched the ground, never spoke, but it showed. Every time it pulsed, the forest around you shifted. A moment from your childhood, tucked beneath a willow tree, a voice you'd forgotten, calling your name from a hallway that never existed. The feeling of standing at a threshold you'd never dared cross, until now. The lantern wasn't just a guide, it was a mirror. Eventually it stopped. You stood in a hollow glade, ringed by stones, and silent as a held breath. The lantern hovered above a pool of water, so still, you almost didn't see that it had depth. And in that water, reflected not your face, but two versions of yourself. One turned back, one stepped forward, and the lantern dimmed, waiting for your decision. You knelt, touched the surface. The ripples spread outward, and the two reflections merged, not into a single answer, but into possibility. You were both. You were neither. You were still becoming. The lantern dipped once, then slowly floated toward you. You reached for it, and this time, it didn't burn. It simply settled into your hand, like it had always been there. The flame inside bent gently in the rain, but never went out. And from behind you, a voice, the companion, but older, wiser, speaking in a language you didn't need to learn. You carry it now, the light that remembers, the shadow that forgives. Don't lose it. You turned. The path was back, the rain lighter, and the forest no longer watched. It walked with you, as if proud, as if curious what you'd become. The cabin still stood when you returned, warm, patient. You stepped inside, hung the lantern by the door, and for the first time, its light did not chase shadows away. It welcomed them. The rain faded by morning. It didn't stop, just softened, like someone humming a tune long after the song had ended. The light through the cabin window was diffused, bluish and calm, but something had changed. Not in the trees, not in the sky, in you. The lantern still hung by the door, its blue flame flickering slower now, like a heartbeat syncing with yours. The companion stirred, then rose. It didn't stretch or yawn. It just looked at you with eyes that knew, as if you were no longer a traveler here, but something the forest had finally accepted as its own. You stepped outside. The forest greeted you. No birds sang, no branches cracked, but everything around you felt alive, not in movement, in memory. You understood now. This wasn't just a place. It was a keeper, a breathing vault of what had been, what could have been, and what still might yet become. And today, it had chosen to show you its oldest stories, the ones carved in root and shadow, the ones it only tells to those who stay long enough. The companion led you through a different path, one not made by footfall, but by recognition. The trees leaned back as you passed, their trunks revealing marks, not scars, symbols. You didn't remember carving them, but you understood them anyway, like muscle memory in the soul. Each one told part of your story, but not as you remembered it. One mark showed you running, not walking, your hands red with something that might have been fear. Another showed you kneeling, speaking to something taller than trees. A third showed you asleep, in a bed of leaves, while the forest built a mask around your face. You asked no questions. The answers would come. Eventually you reached a stone, half buried in earth and moss, its surface worn smooth by rain and time. And etched into it, faint but clear, was your name, your real one, the one you hadn't used in years, the one you stopped saying. When the world outside got too loud, you knelt, ran your fingers over the stone, and behind you, the companion sat, watching, not as a guide now, as a witness. From deep beneath the forest floor, you felt it, a hum, soft, ancient, like something waking up. Because you came back, roots shifted, leaves stirred in patterns that weren't wind, and for a moment, you heard voices, not whispers, not ghosts, just echoes of yourself, fractured across timelines you never lived. Turn back, go deeper, stay, run, remember, forget. Each one spoke truth, each one was real, because the forest doesn't deal in lies, only in layers. You sat beside the stone. Rain returned gently. The companion rested its head on your leg, and for a while, there was no fear, no mystery, just belonging. You didn't need to understand all of it, because sometimes, the forest doesn't ask for comprehension, it asks for presence. From the corner of your eye, you saw something shift, not in shadow, but in light. The lantern still hung by the cabin door, but now its flame burned green, and in its glow, a figure, waiting, not threatening, not urgent, just waiting, like a memory come back, to see what you'd become. You stood slowly, the stone behind you still warm, as if your name had just been carved there minutes ago, not decades, not lifetimes. The companion rose beside you, its fur bristling slightly, though not in fear, in recognition. Something was near, not hidden, not hostile, but heavy, like a memory you didn't mean to carry this long. And at the edge of the glade, bathed in the flickering green glow of the lantern, you saw yourself, not exactly you, taller, still, wrapped in the same cloak of forest-woven black you wore once, or would wear soon. Their eyes held the sky. Their voice was the hush between branches. They didn't smile, but they didn't need to. They were already inside your thoughts, already part of the path you took, the part you never spoke aloud. The companion sat between you, watching both, neutral. Then it lay down, as if to say, "This is yours." The other you spoke first. Their voice was soft, but old, aged not by time, but by the weight of staying here. Too long. You kept going, You didn't leave when you could have. You remembered what I chose to forget. You wanted to ask what that meant. But something in you already knew. This was the version of you that turned away at the river, who didn't follow the lantern, who never opened the cabin door. They stayed still, and in doing so, became the forest's echo, its stillborn whisper. A voice paused. They knelt in front of you, their movements fluid, like rain drifting down bark. And from beneath their cloak, they drew out something. A mirror, cracked, framed in root and bone, reflecting not your face, but a dozen versions of it. Crying, smiling, lost, brave, all flickering like firelight on water. They handed it to you, and whispered, "Take it. It's not to see yourself. It's to remember you are many." You accepted, and in the instant your fingers brushed the frame, the forest shuddered, not violently, just enough to remind you. It too was listening, watching, weighing what would come next. The other you stepped back. Their edges shimmered, like steam over snow, and slowly, their form faded, not with finality, but with peace, as if a chapter had closed, that never should have stayed open so long. The lantern's green flame shifted to amber, warm, welcoming, and at last, the forest breathed. You turned to the companion. It stood again, tail wagged once, a blink that meant, well done. Together, you began walking again, not forward, not back, just deeper, into where the forest wasn't just a place anymore, but a part of you, a memory with roots, a dream with teeth, a home that only exists when you're ready to find it. You walked until the trees leaned inward again, their trunks bending like they were whispering secrets, only you were meant to hear. The forest had shifted once more. No birds, no wind, no echoes, only the sound of roots, alive and pulsing beneath the earth, like veins through a sleeping giant. The companion didn't speak, didn't guide. It simply walked at your side, its silence full of trust, as if it, too, had heard the call. The path led down, steeper and steeper, until the soil grew soft beneath your boots, and each step echoed like a heartbeat. In the hollow belly of the world, moss coated the trees like fur. The rain no longer fell in drops, but in mist, fine silver, and unrelenting. You reached a clearing at last. You could call it that, because what lay ahead was not sky, but stone. A wide, circular pit, its walls slick with lichen and water. At the center, a spiral staircase made of roots, twisting downward, lit by faint glowing mushrooms, and motes of light that didn't come from anything you could see. You stepped down, one turn, then two. The forest rose above you like a breath held in the lungs of the world, and then you arrived. The Rootkeeper's Hollow, a chamber so wide it could have held a cathedral. Roots hung from above like chandeliers, dripping slow rain into pools of still, dark water. At the center stood a tree, but not like any tree you'd seen. It had no leaves. Its bark was black as sleep, and its limbs stretched upward in a frozen scream, carved from silence. At its base sat a figure, wrapped in robes of mud and moss, crowned with thorns and candle stubs, eyes closed, waiting. You did not speak. You did not need to. The Rootkeeper opened its eyes. They glowed not with fire, but with memory, not yours. The forest, it rose without a sound, its limbs too long, its fingers like driftwood shaped by time. And when it spoke, the trees above shivered. You carry it now, the flame that remembers, the mirror that sees many, the name buried in stone. You've come far, but to leave this forest whole, you must go deeper still. You nodded, not because you agreed, but because something in you had always known this would come. The Rootkeeper reached beneath its cloak and pulled forth a key. One, grown over with ivy. It didn't shine, it didn't glimmer, but it hummed. When placed in your palm, there is a door, beneath the roots, behind your shadow. Only one who carries the forest within may unlock it. Only one who is not afraid to remember may pass through. You took the key. The companion barked once, quietly. It was not a warning. It was a good luck. As you turned to go, the Rootkeeper whispered, so softly the rain seemed to hush to listen. Do not look back. When you open the door, what follows will not follow you kindly. You began to climb back to the surface, key clenched in your fist, the forest shifting around you, like it knew this part of the story was nearly done. The rain had stopped, not because the sky cleared, but because the forest had paused, held its breath, turned every leaf and branch toward what you now held in your hand. The key was cold, not lifeless, just waiting, like it had waited for years, decades, maybe longer. You and the companion stood before the tree, not the root keeper's tree, but one older, wider than a house, taller than sight. The bark was smooth in some places, worn in others, and completely dark in the center, where a shadow clung like a scar. And within that shadow was the door. It wasn't made of wood. It wasn't shaped with hands. It was grown, a seam in reality, wrapped in moss and root, barely visible unless you looked too long. And when you did, you saw yourself reflected in it, not as you are, not even as you were, but as you might have been. Had you never turned around that first night? Had you never followed the flame? Had you never remembered? The companion growled softly, not in warning, in mourning, as if something was about to be lost, that could never return. In the same shape, you stepped closer, raised the key. The shadow around the seam recoiled, sizzled like mist on fire, and the tree shivered. A groan echoed through the roots beneath you, deep creaking, like a memory stirred awake. You inserted the key into a hollow you hadn't noticed until this moment. Fit too perfectly, like the final piece of a puzzle you didn't know you were building. The lock turned, the seam widened, and the door behind your shadow opened. It wasn't dark beyond it, not in the way you expected. It was a gray place, like fog with weight, where shapes drifted without sound. Memories, fragments, versions of you that had never quite come to be. One of them saw you. It blinked, spoke with your voice. You came back. Another reached for you, with hollow eyes. Another wept, silently, as it faded into the fog. You stepped forward. The companion tried to follow, but stopped. Its paws touched the threshold, and withdrew. This place was not for it, only for you. As you entered, the door closed behind you, softly, without a lock this time. And inside, the fog thickened. You walked, alone, but never without presence, because within this strange corridor of what could have beens, you felt something calling, not with a voice, with a pull, toward the center, toward what lay at the heart of the forest's oldest truth. The gray corridor stretched on, though there were no walls, no floor, no sky, only mist, only you, and the faint echo of every version of yourself you never became. Some drifted past you, their feet not touching the ground. Some wept without tears. Others laughed without joy, but all of them watched, not with blame, not with envy, just understanding. You followed the pull, not a sound, not a light, a feeling, like gravity reversed, drawing you not downward, but inward. And then, you saw it, the chamber at the center of the fog, round, still, lit only by a floating ember that hung in the air, pulsing like a heartbeat. In the middle of the room, a chair, wooden, carved from a fallen limb of the forest itself, its seat worn smooth by time, and seated in it, or something shaped like you. They didn't look up, didn't blink. Their body was hollow, like a shell sculpted from smoke and ash. But their hands were yours, exact, real, still warm. One of them held a feather, the other a bone, both trembling. You approached, slow, certain. The hollow self raised its eyes, and for the first time, you saw what you were hiding from. Not fear, not pain, but choice. This self had never chosen. They had stayed in the fog, weighing the possibilities forever, never stepping forward. The price of never deciding, of staying suspended in the gray, between before and after. They looked at you, with the eyes of someone who had seen every path, and walked none. They held the feather toward you. This is what you were, they whispered, when you ran. Then they held out the bone. This is what you became, when you forgot. Then they raised both together. But this is what you must carry, if you wish to leave whole. You reached out, not to take one, to take both. And as your fingers closed around them, the hollow self exhaled, A sound like wind through the oldest trees. Their form collapsed into mist, not vanishing, returning, rejoining you. The feather and bone in your hand. The soft and the solid. The light and the enduring. And in your chest, something shifted. A warmth, a grounding, a knowing. You weren't leaving this place empty. You were taking back a piece of yourself. Long buried beneath rain and ash and dream. A door appeared behind you. No key this time. No threshold. Just a way out. The fog began to lift, and somewhere far above, you heard the forest breathing again. The door opened without sound. Beyond it, green, gold, the soft wet hush of a clearing, just kissed by rain. You stepped through, and the world welcomed you back. The companion was there, lying by the campfire. It looked up slowly, ears twitching, as if sensing the shift in you. Before it even saw your face, you had left it behind, to walk through the fog alone. But it had waited, just like the fire, just like the rain. The clearing was the same, but it felt different. Not haunted, not watchful, just quiet, peaceful. The storm had passed. The trees stood tall but relaxed, like sentries off duty. Above, the clouds parted slightly, letting through a pale moon that shimmered across the leaves, like spilled silver. You sat down by the fire again, the place you had first begun, the beginning that now felt like an ending, and the companion rested its head on your knee. You looked into the fire. For a moment, it flickered, not orange, but green. A final nod from the lantern flame, somewhere deep in the forest. A quiet farewell. You took the feather and bone from your pocket, held them in the firelight. They didn't burn. They simply rested there, heavy with meaning, light with memory. You didn't need to carry them anymore. They were part of you now. Far in the distance, an owl called. The forest didn't answer, because it didn't need to. You had returned, not to a place, but to yourself. And now, it was time to sleep. The companion breathed slowly, warm beside you. The fire cracked, soft and steady. Rain tapped gently at the leaves above, not as a warning, not as a whisper, but as a lullaby. The fire dimmed slowly, its light melting into shadows, not vanishing, just softening, like the forest itself was tucking you in. You lay back on the mossy earth, still warm from where the firelight had touched it. Above you, the canopy swayed gently, 1,000 wet leaves rocking in time, with the quiet heartbeat of the rain. The companion curled beside you, a silent sentinel of fur and trust. Its breathing deepened. So did yours. No thoughts chased you now. Not the shadows, not the doors, not the root keeper's warning. Because here, there was no threat, only space, only calm, only the knowledge that what you'd faced was real. And behind you, you stared up into the limbs of the trees. A gap in the canopy revealed a patch of sky, dark blue and full of drifting mist. There were no stars, but there were fireflies, dancing, blinking, floating like drifting wishes that never needed to be spoken aloud. Your body grew heavier. The earth beneath you didn't pull you down, held you, softly, without demand, like it had been waiting for you to simply rest. And as the rain fell, finer and finer, until it was nothing but mist, your breath matched the rhythm of the forest's endless hush. The companion nuzzled closer, its eyes closed, its ears twitched once, and then, in the hush of sleep, you both surrendered. Somewhere in the distance, the owl called again. This time, you didn't need to listen. The forest would keep watch. You do not fall asleep. You arrive in sleep, like stepping into a warm pool beneath starlight, or pulling on a coat lined with forgotten childhood laughter. Everything is soft, colorless but not dim, soundless but not silent. You're walking again, barefoot this time. The moss is thick and damp beneath your soles, welcoming, like a bed that remembers your shape. Above, the sky is gray-violet, not stormy, just heavy with memory. Each drop of rain that falls echoes something once felt, a moment, a glance, a sound long faded. You hear voices, not loud, not clear, but familiar. You see shapes in the mist, some smiling, some crying, some turning to you with outstretched hands, before dissolving into smoke. You're not afraid. These are not ghosts. They're remnants, left behind like footprints, where the rain never quite dried. You reach a pool, circular, still, not water, not quite, a mirror, but not of your face. When you peer in, you see the fire, that first night, the flame in the woods, the figure in the distance, your own breath misting in the cold. But now you see what was behind it, a second presence, a shape in the trees, watching, waiting, not evil, not kind, just waiting. The mirror ripples, and the pool speaks, not in words, in images. You see the root keeper, the stare of roots, the hollow self, the door behind your shadow, and you see yourself, carrying the feather and bone, into a place of pure white light, where they dissolve, where you remain. The rain speaks then, gently, like breath against the back of your neck. You have remembered enough. The rest belongs to the earth. Sleep now, and so you do, not because you are tired, but because the forest has decided. It is your time to rest, and it will hold watch, until you wake. You wake with a breath that feels like beginning, the kind of breath you take not because you must, but because the world has made room for you to do so. The campfire is embers now, no flame, no smoke, just the low pulse of warmth, nestled in ash like a sleeping heart. The companion is still there, curled beside you, its fur damp with dew, its chest rising and falling, in perfect peace. For a moment you don't move, you just listen, to the hush, to the slow rhythm of the morning rain, no longer falling, just dripping, from branch to branch, leaf to leaf, each drop a soft tap on the surface of waking. The forest glows, not in color, not yet, in presence, the kind of glow that comes, not from the sky, but from everything around you, returning to itself. You sit up, stretch, breathe. The aches are gone, the weight too. Even the strange pull from the hollow place behind the trees has stilled. Somewhere far away, a bird calls, not a warning this time, a greeting. The first rays of sunlight thread through the trees, lighting the mist like spun glass. You and the companion stand. The path before you is clear. No roots to climb, no shadows to chase, no doors, just a narrow trail that leads away from the clearing, out from under the shelter of ancient branches, and toward the edge. You walk together. Each step is soft, not hesitant, honoring. And as you walk, you feel it. Every step further from the forest is not a leaving, it's a carrying. The silence, the rain, the door, the flame, all of it remains in you now. A weightless echo, a memory with its own heartbeat. When you reach the edge of the trees, the companion stops. You both look back. The forest watches, not possessive, not reluctant, just present, as if to say, you were here, and you may return. You step into the sun. The companion follows, and behind you, the trees close, not to hide the path, but to let it rest. You lie down once more, not in the forest, but in a field just beyond it, where the trees no longer shadow, but bless. The grass is soft, still wet with the kiss of morning, but warm with sun. The companion curls beside you again, quiet as ever. Its eyes close slowly, and this time, yours follow. Above you, the sky stretches wide, blue and pale and endless, but there are no clouds, only memories drifting, like petals across your mind. No fear now, no doors, no echoes in the dark, only light, only the gentle weight of sleep, pulling like a tide too kind to resist. You feel something beneath your head, not a pillow, a bed of moss, a cradle of earth, and in your hand, you realize the bone and feather have become something new, something whole, a small charm, woven with root and twine, still warm from the fire, a token, a reminder. You don't need to understand it, you only need to keep it. In the forest, it does not call you back, because it is already with you, in your breath, in your dreams, in the steady beat of your heart. When the world grows too loud, the fire, the fog, the stare of roots, the whisper in the rain, all of it now rests inside the quiet space behind your ribs, where sleep lives, where stories wait. So rest now. There are no more footsteps to follow, no more riddles, just the slow exhale of the woods, echoing your own. You are safe. You are held. You are home.